Imagine this. You have a big test coming up. You find a nice quiet place to study. You have your textbook out in front of you with your notepad on the side, pen in hand, and a highlighter close by. You are ready to dive in. You read and read, taking notes and highlighting along the way, but you realize that none of it really seems to be sinking in. In fact, you might be wondering if all that time was just wasted time. Well, I want to talk to you today about some study strategies you can use to help you make the most out of your study time. I will give you information on preparing for your study session, on getting the most out of your textbook, and also how to remember the information that you've learned. Well, the last time I was taking college courses was 26 years ago, and my life was very different then. I worked a part-time job, and really the only person I had to take care of was myself. Now, I work full-time, and I also have 4 extra people in my home that I care for. And it also seems like I require a lot more sleep now than I did back then. But all that said, it just means that I really don't have a lot of spare time for studying, so I have to use the time that I do have very wisely. I'm going to start by telling you how to prepare for your study session. You want to be sure to get plenty of sleep before you study. In fact, the Science Daily reports that getting high-quality sleep is actually associated with better academic performance. So waiting until the last minute and trying to pull an all-night cram session could actually backfire on you. You also want to choose a time of day that is best for you for studying. This is going to be a time when your brain is most alert. For some, it might be just waking up a little bit earlier to study, but for others it might be better to find some time either before or right after supper to study. Just be careful not to wait too close to bedtime, because whenever you are ready to go to bed, your brain still might be processing all of that information, which could prevent you from getting that high quality sleep that is so important. Next, I want to cover with you getting the most out of your textbook. You could try using an active reading strategy such as PQ4R. In this method, P stands for preview, and this is just scanning through the chapter a section at a time and looking at the general topics that are going to come up. Next is query, and as you are looking through that information, you want to be asking yourself questions about that information. And you can actually write those questions down to be answered later. 4R stands for read, reflect, recite, and review. You want to read through each section very carefully this time, and you want to look for the answers to the questions that you had earlier. Next, you want to reflect on questions, examples, and relations that are listed in your section that you're reading as well. And then you want to recite aloud in your own words the answers that you find to the questions that you had earlier. And then finally, you'll review. Review the entire chapter, just skimming over it very quickly and answering the questions again as you go through the chapter. And if you come across any questions that you can't answer, those are the sections that you want to reread. And then also, John Kohlstrom from the University of California, Berkeley adds the repeat here at the bottom. And what he recommends is once you've moved on to another chapter, you want to come back to the previous chapters and go through this entire process again and just make sure that you are retaining the information that you learned. Another thing that you can do to help you remember the information in your textbook is to use concept mapping. And this is just condensing the information from the textbook into a visual representation that demonstrates the relationships between the topics, the main ideas, and the supporting details that you find throughout the chapter. And finally, here are some things that you can do to help you remember the information that you have learned. You want to make a connection between the new information that you're learning and something that you already know. Or think about how the information that you're learning relates to you personally, how it relates to other texts that you have read, and also how it relates to the world around you. Now, this next tip that I have for you hits almost every top 10 list I could find on study strategy, and it is teach the information that you've just learned to someone else. In fact, Kathleen Wood, who's a PhD at the University of Mary Hardin-Baylor, says that her best study tip for her students is to study to teach. Because you know, if you are learning this information that you're going to be sharing with someone else, you want to understand it so completely that when you are sharing it, that you don't end up looking foolish. Then the next tip is you want to take regular breaks during your study session. This actually can help improve your retention of the information. And there's just a couple things for your break. You want to be sure not to head to the TV or to your smartphone during that break, which could totally sidetrack your study session. And what you want to do instead, based on what Recall Plus website recommends, is that you could take a walk, you could do some light exercise, stretching, listen to some music, or just have a snack. So in summary, I've given you information on how to prepare for your study session, how to get the most you can out of your textbook, and also how to remember the information that you've learned. And my hope is that you'll be able to put these strategies to work for you so that you never have that feeling that the time you spent studying was wasted time.